Hello everyone. Welcome to the Azim Premji University Alumni Webinar Series. Today's spotlight is on biodiversity and conservation. This is going to be facilitated by Seema Mundoli. She's a faculty member at Azim Premji University. Her research focuses on the role of nature in Indian cities in addressing the challenges of environmental sustainability and social justice. Go for it, Seema.
Thank you, Nikhil. And welcome all, and a very warm welcome to Aparna and Tara. This is a especially special event for us because Aparna is an alumni with the undergraduate program, and Tara has been a student of our master's program, the MA in Development. So it's extremely special that we have two alumni from two different programs here with us today. So before we get into the conversation, just a couple of things. One is let's to start with a layout of how this interaction is going to proceed. So we have some fun things in store for you. We also have some serious questions and discussions. So especially for the audience, we actually have a short quiz for you. And during the conversation and the interaction, we will be asking a question. I will project a picture on the screen, and Tara or Aparna, who have shared that picture, will ask you a question. So please type in your answers in the YouTube chat, and towards the end, we will take a look at the answers as well. Unfortunately, no prizes for this, but we just hope you'll join in for participating in it. In addition, we'll be also having a mocha with Mundoli round in between, which will be a fun round, I promise. So please do stay for that. We will also be taking audience questions at the end, and so you can also save your questions to ask Tara and Aparna a little later. So before we begin, today is the World Nature Conservation Day, and this day has been designated as such to raise awareness about biodiversity, both animals and plants in the world, and to see how we can move towards protecting it. So this webinar is being hosted on this days, keeping in mind, and Tara and Aparna especially been invited for this to be a part of this because of their work in conservation. And when we say conservation, normally what comes to mind are very charismatic species like elephants and tigers and rhinos. But more and more, there's been an acknowledgement that conservation involves not so charismatic species like the frogs and the spiders, because they're very, very important for the ecosystem, but also, even more importantly, communities who are part of the conservation landscape. So one final thing before we start off, you may see some activity in the screen behind me. I apologize for that, but those will be my foster kittens. These are two kittens that were dumped in somebody's house and in a box. And I'm just fostering them, giving them some TLC and socializing them so that they can be adopted because I foster for the Bangalore Cat Squad. So please forgive any interruptions you may see behind. But also, dogs and cats are, I don't know what many people think, but dogs and cats are not actually seen as nature or wildlife. And yes, feral dogs and cats have a huge negative impact on wildlife because they can be seen as invasives that destroy wildlife. But recently, there have been these ideas of euthanizing dogs, stray dogs in very large numbers is being proposed to address this problem of stray dogs, because we don't see dogs as part of biodiversity, nature, etc. And while dog population is a huge problem, I think this model that follows the US pattern, just like the smart cities is not relevant for us, or the protected area network is not relevant for the Indian context of conservation, we should also really rethink about whether dog euthanasia, is relevant for this, for the Indian context. So we will be talking a lot about this today, about what is wild, what is domestic, what is conservation. But now, enough of my natter and chatter. Let us start our conversation with Tara and Aparna. Welcome, both of you all. Very nice to have you all here. So let's begin with a round of introduction so that the audience gets to know you a little better. So shall we start with you, Tarak? So can you just tell us all something about yourself, what you have been doing, what is your interest, uh, anything interesting about your work? Go ahead. Over to you.
So, first of all, thanks for having me here, Seema. It's very exciting to be on this platform. Little bit about myself. I mean, apart from I was born and brought up in Vellore, Tamil Nadu, and I've grown up on a lovely wooded campus, which was almost like a forest. So I'm a jungly bacha of sorts. I feel very strongly linked to anything lizards, frogs, dogs, cats, trees, birds. You say it, and Tara will be there. Um, Regarding my experience, I have about 3 years of working experience in the dev sector. I've worked with women, worked with farmers, and now I am with Dakshin Foundation, working in the Andaman Islands. We have a research base there, and I'm doing a managerial role there right now. Yeah.
Can you also tell us a little bit about what you studied and a little more details about?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree in environmental science with chemistry and zoology, after which I decided to take a year off and do some exploration just to think about what's out there, what can we explore, how could I apply my learnings, and that was how I came across the NGO sector. And I spent a lot of time working with, again, different groups of people in that period. And that led me to do my master's with Azim Premji, MA Development, batch of 1719, where I specifically came there with the intent of specializing in sustainability and wanting to learn about how ecology overlaps with economy, sociology, politics, policy, etc. So the course was a really good one.
Thanks, Tara. Aparna, over to you.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Seema, for having me here, and I'm really excited for our conversation today. Unlike Tara, though, I'm from Bangalore, and I've spent all my life in Bangalore, in the city of Bangalore, and I'm very much a city girl. So I find it when I look back on my life now that I am in the field of conservation, I find it pretty odd that I am here. And I don't know. I guess it's just a bunch of happy coincidences that I'm here in conservation. Through my education, through my schooling, I think I was very interested in biology and in the sciences. And that's why I took it up for my bachelor's. But I also had this one feeling in me that I really wanted to do something for the world. I wanted to make a change, given that there were so many problems around. And that was one feeling which was there. I've also, like my family, along with my family, we used to go on a few outdoor trips and treks, and that's about it, which started my curiosity towards this field. I think it was my time in APU during my bachelor's that I really found my love for the field of ecology and wildlife and nature. Along with Divya Uma at APU, I did a small field project, and I really found that I love being on field, collecting data, coming back, analyzing it. And that was something that I wanted to do, carrying forward in my life. After my bachelor's at APU, I went on to do my master's in wildlife biology and conservation. This was at a National Center for Biological Sciences. Again, I had a really nice experience over there. It was like a deep dive into all the subjects that I really love, into different kinds of ecology, from community ecology, marine ecology, plant ecology, and so many different types of ecology, as well as conservation. And we got to explore different types of ecosystems as well and visit several of them. And I guess through all those visits, I found my love in rainforests. And that's where I work. I've been working for 1.5 years now in the Nature Conservation Foundation with the Ghats program over there. And my work has largely been in the area of science for that conservation, but I'm now working on the science of restoration in restoration ecology. So that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Aparna. So, both of you, one of you is from with a nature kind of a background, but in a city, and the other one is a full city kid. Thankfully, now I think many even say that Bangalore cities also have nature, which is what something that
Of
we have been
course.
trying to do. So, but and the landscapes you're working in are also fascinating. Western Ghats and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, both very threatened and very interesting spaces. So let's do the first audience question. Can we have the slide up, please? Yeah, the next slide. Yes, Tara.
Yeah, okay, audience. So this one is from me to you. The question is, what do you think this is a picture of, and why do you think that this picture is up here?
Okay. Thanks. So you guys can take a look at the question and then write your answers for the next into the chat box in YouTube, and we will reveal the answers towards the end of this interaction. So yes, so let's move on to the meat of today's interaction as well. And so my first question is to both of y'all. And so it's World Nature Conservation Day. So let's start with, what does conservation mean for both of you? You know, what do you what when you hear the word conservation, we all have something in our minds that comes out. So what is it when we say conservation? What does it mean for each one of you? Aparna, you want to go first?
Yeah. I think I wanted. I knew you would ask this question, but I think it's quite a hard one actually. Uh, but I think the fact that you asked this question itself, I think, says something about conservation. In that, what does it mean to me? And I'm mostly trained as a scientist, and as a scientist, you're trained to see the world or think in a very objective way,
Hmm.
and every or you're trying to think about answers or solutions to questions that apply to broad ecological ecosystems or ecological processes. But I think conservation is quite different in the sense that it is, and I think also very much needs to be subjective. And conservation is something that is extremely specific to locations, to people, to ecosystems, to landscapes, and so I think I guess I would think about conservation as something which is solutions or actions that are taken to solve problems in nature or between nature and people, which are very location or site specific.
Thank you. Tara, what about you? What do you think?
Um, well, having dabbled in BSc, which is science, and then done my MA, which is social, I have a very mixed take on the concept of conservation. As much as I admire and respect that conservation really does have a lot of roots in deep ecology and pure sciences. I also strongly believe that conservation stands for not just preservation of something, but also enables the continuation of something, whether it's ecological or cultural or social. So, for example, for me, conservation extends beyond just megaflora, fauna, or plants and animals, to also say something as trivial yet really important as a variety of, say, native seeds that is like very important to a farmer. So even working towards conserving those seeds, preserving those seeds, preserving storage methods of those seeds, cultivation and harvest and consumption of those things, to me is also comes under a sort of umbrella of conservation where it overlaps with even the social life. Or from my past work experience, I've worked with women weavers, and we do natural dye. We did natural dye khadi handloom, which is a method of weaving which is dying out, but is also extremely important to a lot of marginalized communities. So for me, conservation also extends beyond just the ecological and goes into a socio-economical aspect as well as a concept, and can be applied in many, many fields.
Yeah. Thanks, Tara. So I guess when conservation started off, and you use the word deep ecology. So when conservation started off, it was more of the intrinsic value of nature. Then later, nature for nature itself. But now, yes, there is like your work itself is showing. Conservation is both an interlinked. If you're thinking of conservation, you have to think of interlinked social and ecological landscapes at the same time. So that's a good thing to remember on, I think, World Nature Conservation Day, that there is more. Nature also includes the people who live in the landscapes, their culture, their traditions, all those. So the next question is. So you both have the organizations and the landscapes that you have worked on are extremely fascinating, and it's in many ways been a journey of both of you, in some sense, of being in cities and then moving into very intense forested landscapes or working with communities. So can you, for the benefit of the audience and for all of us, just give a little bit of detail about the places that you worked in, what kind of landscapes they were, and what was the work that you were doing? Also, since you are alumni of the university, this may be especially interesting for not just students who maybe watch, current students who may be watching this show, but also those who wish to apply for the programs here, just to get a sense of what you'll go ahead and do when you do your masters and your undergrad. So again, Aparna.
Yeah, a little bit about the master's program that I did. I guess I'll start with that. It was a 2-year program, and the first 1.5 years was a lot of coursework mainly. And as I was saying, it had a bunch of coursework on ecology and a bunch of coursework on conservation, and then on tools for both ecology and conservation. But it was a largely science focused course, and we had the training was largely centered towards research and how to use how to take nature and how to ask questions in nature and how to answer them and so on. Through the course, I got to visit a lot of places across India, right from the savannas and tree grass ecosystems of central India and the eastern Ghats, and then lots of the western Ghats, and as well as the Andaman Islands. Towards the end of the course, which is the last 6 months of the course, is a place where everybody can do an independent research project. And I did my project in the Western Ghats. My project was on a seed predation. So the idea is that I did it in a place called Valparai, which is in the Annamalai Hills. And the forests over there are quite fragmented. And during the 1890s, large tracts of rainforests were cut down and converted to tea and coffee plantations. And small patches of forests exist as islands in between the sea of tea and coffee and human settlement. And this changes the ecology of the place, in that the animals that reside or don't reside in fragments changes. So I was looking at how changes in the mammal community can impact seed survival of some rainforest tree species. So my day would how I did the project was that I would collect seeds of these rainforest tree seeds and put it in a arrange them in a small plot, and then I had several plots near trees and one within an exclosure which prevented all mammals from coming in, and one outside. And I would set up these camera traps and look at sea predation every week. That was my day. It was pretty fun.
So, what did you see in your camera trap? What kind of, other than, I mean, what is the most interesting animal or creature you saw on your?
What was the most interesting animal? I think one thing which was quite interesting was that I expected most of the sea predators to be rodents, because they are granivorous species. But I found so many mammals eating the seeds, especially of one species. There was Nilgiri langur, which really loved the seeds. And they would do funny things as well, come and fight on the camera trap, or meddle around with the exclosure experiment, try to open it up and so on. And there was mouse deer, Indian spotted chevrotin, which I didn't expect it to be a seed predator, but it was quite cool that it came and ate some seeds. And then there were these other animals elephants. I was very scared of that the elephants would come and destroy my project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Tara, you want to go next?
Um, well, sorry, wait, what was the. I was so interested in your answer, Aparna. What was the.
Just a background of what you have been doing since your masters and
What
where you.
so I've been doing quite a bit since masters. I've been with two organizations before my current one. So I started off working with women weavers in Andhra with the Timbuktu Collective, which is an NGO based in Anantapur. And it was quite an interesting experience because I sort of post masters, I was all ready to be like, yes, ecology, sustainability, let's do it. And then I'm in a social enterprise. So that was where actually that really opened my eyes to the fact that, oh, conservation is not limited to just ecology, but it also is interlinked with livelihoods, economy, and communities and people. And it was a very dynamic space to be in because culturally women are not, even though women know how to weave in families, the male is recognized as the weaver, the women are not given recognition. So the fact that this enterprise was all by women, for women, of women, was itself a very cultural uh, breaking through a glass ceiling in a sense of women empowerment, and also at the same time reviving a lot of traditions that were being lost because people were shifting over to the power looms because it's less labor. And the art of dyeing yarn, spinning yarn, washing it was something that is a very, very skilled, time consuming process, but is fascinating in the sense that a lot of these colors which are chemical, although it's quicker and a person can weave more, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you have more saris or towels or whatever you can sell them all. So a lot of the time you're just stuck with all this stock, and then that water you can't, it's I mean it's polluting. Whereas with this natural process, we were able to grow greens and then consume it for ourselves. And it was a whole cyclic process which was quite interesting to work with. So I spent a good amount of time learning a lot of things in that space, which then also got me to think about, okay, where does all our food come from? Because we were growing greens with this water. So I wanted to explore working with farmers. And I remember something that really struck a chord with me in college was what one of my professors said, where a farmer is not just a producer, but also a consumer. It may seem like a very obvious fact, but when it was stated in that way, it really resonated with me, and I wanted to see what our farmers are experiencing on a day-to-day basis, what their lives are, because it's so easy for us to go to the supermarket, pick up one packet of 1 kilo, this 2 kilos, that, or whatever. But for them, it's months and months of work, and it's a lot of risk. And especially when it's very easy to say, oh, chemicals are bad, you need to change over to this. But when there are so many people behind you saying, farm like this, farm like that, do this, do that, and have absolutely no knowledge or skill sets of how to actually feel the earth, understand what you're growing, understand your plants, that also was an eye opener to the importance of trying to um, I think, work towards building a bridge between the top and the bottom, so to speak, because that if that communication between the two spaces is lacking, then people are always going to be butting heads, and there's always somebody or the other is going to suffer all the time, and that's why we're in this sector, right? To try and mitigate all this suffering. So I really did learn a lot about the importance of seeds, crops, cultivation, and even in forests as well, in the hilly regions where people grow coffee, pepper, pineapple, the conflicts they face with wildlife coming in and out, and it's a very um, I don't know, it's a very dynamic and challenging livelihood to have, and I think people really, I feel like I'm glad that I've got that exposure and that understanding that conservation is more than just ecology, and it also, farming is a big thing about it, because without farmers we'd all starve. And then from there, I think moving into this space, I also wanted to explore. That's how I came to Dakshin, because mainland and island life is very, very different, and so I'm glad that I now have an opportunity to look at an island space and see what the island dynamics in islands are like. And I'm looking forward to spending more time in the Andamans and learning more as I go. It's already been a very exciting, eventful 2 months, but I'm looking forward to learning more on this journey of conservation. And I think the master's program at APU helped me sort of be better prepared for, especially because we explored socio-ecological systems, agriculture, water, energy, and we also did a lot of sociology. I think that really helped me um, keep an eye out and be able to identify these themes in the work that I do. Yeah, that's something that.
Okay, thanks, Tara. So we have some answers to the question that you asked. There are Chinese, it looks like a Chinese script, Rosetta Stone. Is this a Brahmi inscription, script of an Adivasi language, an old language, writing forbidding hunting? Well, we will wait for the answers from Tara a little towards the end. But
Okay.
now it's Aparna's turn to ask her question. So,
Okay.
can we have the okay? So the second question, the this is the picture.
I guess it's a easy question. I'm not sure, but identify the animal whose poop this belongs to, and can you identify what this animal has eaten? And at like apart from grass and so on, I guess I'm looking for some berry. Can you identify the berry?
Okay, so just everyone take a close look, and then
Yeah.
we'll move back to the discussion. And please type in your answers in the YouTube chat box. Okay. Now, Aparna, you've been working, you said you are working on a restoration of degraded landscapes, right? And there's a lot of restoration work that is being, you hear of, people are planting trees, forest regeneration is another area. But when you do restoration, what do you think in the area that you do, what do you think are the main are there any broad guidelines that you can have for restoration work? Or should it be very specific? Like, can you have a manual of 10 points to do when in
Yeah.
Western Ghats, if that can be applied, say, in the Andaman Islands?
Okay. That's an interesting question. I think restoration in general can have broad guidelines, but actions which come from these guidelines need to be more specific towards uh, uh, ecological systems that where they're going to be applied in. And for example, broad guidelines such as planting trees which are firstly identifying what ecosystem that degraded patch is. Is it a grassland? Is it a forest? Is it a scrubland? And then if we are restoring, then bringing in species which are present in the local native landscape of that place is something which can be done. A lot of these large tree planting schemes, just bring in one particular species, even probably an exotic species which doesn't belong anywhere, even in India, into that particular place and just grow it in rows and rows of trees.
So,
That
give me
is
an example of a tree species like that for that you've seen maybe in the Western Ghats. Or...
I guess a lot of monoculture plantations are for timber as well, and a lot of eucalyptus is grown very often for timber. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, one more species which has been brought in for restoration, I mean, for these afforestation schemes, I guess, is and also to plant on roadsides and so on, is the species called Senna spectaculus, which is, I guess, going to be the next lantana camera in some sense, because a lot of bears and a lot of animals really like to eat it and they disperse it all across. And it's a very fast growing species and ends up like crowding more dry forest landscapes now. And we're only realizing what a big threat it's going to be in the near future. So I guess I'd like to say that restoration, I guess, has some broad general guidelines. I guess one thing to do before restoration is to first assess whether human intervention is required at all or not, because a lot of landscapes are can naturally regenerate, and if these barriers that prevented regeneration are not there, and so the first step is to basically first remove the barriers, whether if it's a weed, or if it's livestock, or if it is like increase in herbivore populations, to fence off the area for a specific period of time, to just allow the forest to come up for that period of time, or so on. It could be just methods such as that. But a lot of times, forests are quite far away from seed sources, or degraded lands are quite far away from seed sources, and it's important to bring in species. And therein, I mean, that's where it gets a bit tricky, and very important to bring in the right species, which is suitable for that landscape. Uh, yeah, I think that's some of
So
the guidelines.
avoid monocultures, avoid exotics,
Yeah.
uh, landscape specific. Yeah. So these broadly are the guidelines. Tara, you have worked with communities in the organizations. You mentioned that you worked with local communities in the organizations. Now it's always challenging to work with communities. We have a romantic idea of communities, but it's usually very, very challenging. So what are some of the challenges that you faced, and how do you deal with that?
Mm, I think it's when you're new to a place, it's always challenging because you're now an outsider who's going to another place. So you're always there's always this I wouldn't say hostility. People smile on the outside, but you can sort of feel this tension of, okay, who is this person? What is she going to say? Where does she come from? Ooh, so it's sort of an awkward moment when you first meet with groups of people that you have to work with, especially when you're in a role where you have to conduct meetings or you have to collect data and you have to ask people questions. It's very difficult to do it in a way that you actually get information of what a situation is rather than what they think that you want to hear. So I think for me the biggest challenge whenever I go to a new place is to always try to allocate a good amount of time to just build a certain level of rapport and trust with people around me, that I'm not here to try and tell you what to do. I'm here to actually learn from you because I'm genuinely interested in what you go through and how to my limited capacity, what I can do to try and make your life easier in whatever way that you want. So communicating that is always a challenge for me, no matter how many times I've done it. Every time it's always a challenge. But hopefully, with experience and time, it will get better and better. Icebreakers, language, communicating. Yeah, it's something that learn as you go along. But that's always the biggest challenge for me, wherever I go on field, no matter how many field visits I've done.
So both of you are very young women in the field of conservation. So can you, Aparna, can you just kind of elaborate that as someone who's young woman in the scientific community, how important is it for you to develop interdisciplinary skills? And
Okay.
what would your university have contributed as a student to that?
I think, despite irrespective of being a woman, it's important to have interdisciplinary skills in some sense. I guess, especially in this field of conservation, I think it's important. Like as you have said, uh, uh, where we work in nature, I mean, it's not just I mean, we move far away from this understanding that ecological systems are pristine, untouched ecosystems, and they are very much. Socio interlinked socio ecological systems, and these imaginary lines that we draw and demarcate protected areas don't really exist for animals, and they very much exist outside of them as well. And I guess that's where, going forward, I think that's where we need research, and that's where we need conservation as well, in these places outside protected areas where humans and nature interact, and to understand and to find solutions for better better engagement between people and nature, I think it's very important to understand, to have an interdisciplinary understanding in going there. I think my time at APU really helped. Despite being just studying biology, which was my major, I had an exposure to a wide range of studies, area subjects, right from sociology uh, to several courses in this understanding India, where you really get to understand like the problems that India and its people face, which is quite useful in the field of conservation. I think. I think what Tara was speaking about was pretty interesting, and I think it really triggered a thought. Rather than more than academic interdisciplinary subjects, which I think over the course of time we really end up really experiencing and learning something something which I find very useful or very important when engaging with people or with nature. Conservation, I think, is mainly engaging with people to solve problems based on nature, I guess. But when you engage with people, is these soft skills of learning how to talk to people and how to how to talk to diverse kinds of people, right from local people to government managers to private landowners to forest department, and that plays a huge part in like in the success that you have in what you're doing as well, and how easy it is to do it. And I think for a young woman, that is especially important to, I mean, as women, you're always judged when you talk, and you have to be so conscious about how you portray yourself to other people, and it's some people skills are so much more important, I think, for women to develop, unfortunately so, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we're also limited by the clothes that we wear. I mean, always go with the kurta, this thing with the dupatta. You have to have the dupatta, otherwise people would be like, "Where is your dupatta?" Like, the point
Yeah.
of this conversation is not the dupatta. We're trying to talk about this. No, but where is your dupatta? Like, this happened to me once on field where this woman was just so obsessed with the fact that I was wearing like a salwar kameez without a dupatta that she just like we just couldn't have the meeting that I wanted to have. So yeah, it is a
Yeah.
big challenge, I think, as women. We're under a lot of pressure to portray ourselves in a way that commands respect. Like, we always have to power dress as step one, or at least I feel so, of getting
Yeah.
through and trying to get your point across and reach out to people and have them actually listen to what you say rather than just in through one ear and out through the other.
Yeah, I do agree. I remember in one field trip, one lady asked me if I'm married. I said, yes, I'm married. And then she said, where are your bangles? And she refused to talk to me. He said, I'm not wearing bangles, so she's not going to talk to me. But that is it. I mean, that's different cultural things, and we just have to be patient. I wore bangles and went the next time because, okay, that's their cultural traditions that they feel have to be respected. Fine, that's fine with me. I'm okay to respect that. Coming to you, Tara, how do you think that this MA development program, you've done your masters in the university in MA development, and so conservation usually you think of as ecology. So very quickly, what perspectives did the MA development program give you to work in this ecology sustainability?
I think definitely so the first year was a very sort of like laying the foundation and setting a base. So we did get to cover a lot of topics like economics, sociology, politics, law, and then move on to law and governance, which at the time felt like, what? Why are we doing this? What does this have to do with? It was very kitsch kitsch. But in hindsight, I think. Having done a little bit and touched upon all of these topics definitely was useful in that a lot of these learnings do come back to you later when you actually are in a situation on field. Of course, nothing is completely academic, nothing is completely practical, but many of these basic concepts that we covered in the first year I am finding quite useful now. It just takes a little bit of time and patience to actually see that, but it has been useful in that regard. I appreciate the fact that the course thinks about all these multiple aspects and makes it a point to dedicate 2 semesters to just laying the foundation of the importance of intersectionality of different subjects. And again, in the second year, even within one umbrella of subjects, we had a lot of multiple options to choose from within what we wanted, which again uh, is, I think, a very nice thing, because again it makes you realize that yeah, my subject or my field of interest is not as narrow as I thought, and it is eye opening and makes you think. And the fact that you'll have batchmates who are doing, like, you may have a roommate and both of you are doing ecology, but you're doing like completely different subjects. It's perfect, because then you get to discuss, have discussions, and learn even more. So that's something that I really enjoyed and appreciate about the university. And I think that yeah, that is helpful um, in when you come out, and you feel like, yeah, I've really learned and read up a lot of concepts. Now let's see how they actually translate into everyday life. Yeah.
We are getting answers for the second question also, and this seems to have, many of them seem to have got it right, but we will disclose the answer at the towards the end. So let's move to the next question for now, the third question, and this is again, Tara, your question.
Okay. So as the picture shows, this is an illustration of a turtle, of a green turtle. But the turtle isn't green at all. So why then is it called a green turtle?
Okay,
That's my question to you. Why do
why
you
is
think
it
it's called a green turtle? It's not even green, but it's called a green turtle.
Okay, so please type in your answers, the audience, in the chat box. So now we are going to another interesting round, which is called Mocha with Mundoli. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a series of questions to both of them, the same question to both of them, and they have to answer very quickly. So let me get my this thing ready. So
Rapid
I'll ask the
fire.
question, and first, Tara, you can respond, and then Aparna. Okay, and
Okay.
quickly, no waiting, and
No
no
wait.
hamper
Okay.
or anything like the no gifts promised. But yes. So
Sure.
let's start. Tara and then Aparna. Okay, your biggest fear during field work.
Forgetting something important, like a notebook or a pen or something.
Aparna.
I think it was, as I said before, elephants destroying my project.
Okay. Never have I ever.
Ooh, I don't know. um, I'm trying.
No,
Never have I ever climbed a tree in field. Sadly, I've done it at home playing, but never in field.
you must. That must be rectified. Yes, Aparna, you.
Oh, never have I ever. I think I have. I guess I also haven't climbed a tree, and
Okay.
uh, I never have I ever during my fieldwork. I never had to like pee in the forest. I guess.
Who fertilize the
You've
forest?
never
That's
irrigated the fields.
contributed to the
Achha.
forest. Yeah. Okay. The strangest food item you've eaten, Tara.
Fried red ants. Delicious. It tastes like buttered salted popcorn. For those of you who are curious.
Fried red ants. Yes, Aparna.
I haven't eaten any thing interesting because I'm a vegetarian. But I have eaten the seeds from my project, so I guess I've eaten my experiment.
One item you cannot do without in your field work.
Torch. Like a good torch.
Uh,
Very important.
lead socks.
Leech socks. Yes. Anyone knows bitten by leeches? Yes. And
Yeah.
torches. Torches. One of the things we forget is in this mobile phone age. You think the mobile phone will torch will suffice, but no, I agree. Torch is very important. And leech socks, yes,
The
but
headlamp is a good one. I have to get one.
if you weren't working on conservation, what would you be doing?
Probably something in ecology only. For
No, no,
sure.
it's not conservation. You have to be doing something else completely different from ecology. What is the other thing you would do? What is your plan B?
Be a vet.
Oh, yeah. I think as a child, even I would
I wish
be a
you had
vet, but I,
been.
A
yeah.
lot of James Harriet books.
Yeah. Okay, Aparna.
I think I would I would have gone into teaching, and yeah.
You can still go into teaching after all.
But
That is
now
my
I'm
future
losing
plan.
my interest in teaching.
So now, Aparna, you. We
Okay.
started with you and then Tara, okay? Uh,
Okay.
Best day at work.
Best day at work would be like some animal sighting, maybe. I got to see a Nilgiri marten, which was a really good day.
Okay.
Nice.
Is it a lifer as they call it?
It's a lifer and probably will be a lifer.
The only
Probably
time
like
I'm going to say.
no, no, no. I hope not. But
Tara?
So far, yeah, successfully conducting a Sangha meeting all on my own when I didn't know any Telugu. I think I still pat
wow.
myself on the back for that, even though it's been like 2 years since the game. But yes.
That was truly well done. Aparna, again, worst day at work.
Worst day at work is going to be logistical challenges. Field is so many logistical challenges on field. I think one of the worst days was getting like there's this time where I didn't have my permits and my field assistant quit and so many things came at once and that was a pretty bad day.
Oh, you said the word permit and I cringed. I've heard so many permit
Oh.
stories. It's like, okay, mine is a little bit embarrassing, but my worst day on of work was definitely like having loose motions while I was on field. That was a nightmare. Yeah.
Nobody talks about these things, but they need to be talked
Yeah,
about. These
yeah,
are
they
all
need to
very
be
important.
they need to be
What do you
talked
do?
about.
What do you do when
I
you're
think like worse than having your period on field is having loose motions on field. Yeah,
correct?
that's something taboo to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that is, I don't know whom to give as a winner, and I have no hamper to give, but
Okay.
well done. Not eating and losing, not getting permits. Yes, all are very interesting work lives. So now I'm going to ask some questions to both of you. It's the same question to both of you all. And this is as women working in the field. So, like you mentioned, rarely are we ever asked as women when we are working in the field about what difficulties we may have. It's just assumed that you have to just put up with it. You have to prove yourself to be equal to the male research person. So, and I've always found that a little problematic, uh, because we do have our own challenges, and all we're asking is not to have any special concessions made for us, but to be a little understanding of those challenges that we face, be it having your periods during field work, or having to face unwanted getting unwanted attention. All this is a part of being, and we hardly ever talk about it. So my first question to y'all is, what is your worked in office and field, and what is the biggest challenge you faced in while working in the field as women? And if you can give some examples, that would really help. This is also hoping that we all start talking about this in the audience also. There may be young girls who are interested in doing field work but have these apprehensions. It's not to scare anybody. So, Tara, you want to go? Aparna, you go first.
Okay. Uh, I think it is an experience of a woman in the field of nature conservation is quite different from the experience of a man, and especially because you're not sitting in front of a computer all day and you're out in the field. You're dealing with people. You have to and you're dealing with so many elements as well of nature. And I think periods is definitely one thing which changes how we work on certain times of the day. But and as women, though we are trained to like how to deal with it by the time we enter this field in some sense. And but I find that one thing uh, which I think I found difficult to deal with in during my time in field is to know how to engage with people, and that I should to realize that even engaging with colleagues or engaging with people around requires measured interactions, and to consciously be aware of my presence in like how I portray myself, how are people portraying me, and to not send the wrong signals. So,
Yeah.
and that is something which I found on a daily basis is something that I have to like be careful about, especially because I am dealing with so many people. But most specifically, I think in I like as soon as I received my permits, I had to go meet the forest department, and there I had this very awkward interaction, which I was completely unnecessary on what my age was, how am I going to deal with being alone, who is going to be coming with me for field work, and so on. And it is a kind of like unnecessary, I would say, uh, but something which is overall, I guess, a harmless in some sense. But I've also had a little more, several more uncomfortable situations. There was this one time where I was surveying different sites for my project, and I had gone to a site where there were very hardly, which was very new to researchers, and this was a forest site right on the side of the road, and so I just stepped into the forest, and the person who dropped me had left, and by the time he came, there was another person, I guess a person who was working in the farm on opposite me, who came and started talking, and it became really awkward, and I had to like find the next car which came on the road, get onto it, and get away from that situation. And at that point, I really realized that a forest is not a shelter space. If I had gone into the forest, it would have been so much more difficult or dangerous for me. And it's important for women, especially, and for everybody to, especially when you're going to a new place where you don't know, to find out like about that place, and to also have somebody from local person with you, and that's quite important, I think, for everybody, and especially for women, until you get to know that place, especially.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
very well
always have
said.
to put in an extra amount of time
Yeah.
preparing for the field because of these additional things. Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Tara?
I think I mean, I agree with everything that you said, Aparna. Very well said, especially about, the planning part. Always know about where you're going and have somebody local and trusted with you. I think for me, when I really felt the stark difference of what it's like to be a woman out on field versus, have the freedom of a man was when um, I was out on field, and suddenly we were in like hilly area with no network, and plans kept changing, and so to cut it short, I ended up being stuck in field for 2 days longer than I would have liked to, and it was raining heavily, no mobile network, nothing, and we had to I had to wash clothes and like especially inners and like hang them out and rewear them, and there was just no space at all because like I hung it on one place and then one woman came and said, no, you can't hang it here, this is where like my husband and my son and their brothers hang stuff, you have to go put it in there or hang it in the bathroom only and then put a towel on top of it. So even like these simple little things, they may sound trivial, but when you're in that situation and you're frustrated, it's very difficult to remain patient, remain calm, and just put up with it. And just I ended up wearing like wet clothes, damp clothes because I just like there was just no place to even hang my own clothes apart from my kurti or whatever. But even to hang my pants or my inner garments or just even put my dupattas and stuff, they'd be like, no, go put it over there. So there are so many of these simple restrictions that seem very trivial, but when you're in that situation and you have to repeatedly do it, these experiences really add up, and it takes a lot of patience to go through with it and accept that this is what it is and that you can't change it then and there, and you just have to go with it because you don't want to antagonize the people you're with either. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I think these are problems that have been there for very long and are still continuing. We should all consider writing a manual of what to do, what not to do, how to do for
Yes.
Yeah.
all. That would be
I
also
think
be
even for girls on their period, also I've seen them, being treated differently just for being on their period. And then there's where do you, for those who use pads, because of course, I mean, in the cities we all have these, tampons or cups or whatever. But in the villages, girls are still more comfortable with pad because of the whole taboo of, don't do anything before marriage or all that. So yeah, it's kind of sad and frustrating because you feel so powerless when you see them being separated and told, no, put your stuff there. And then they're kind of just like stuck as to where do I throw. And then, again, you see them throwing and then dogs will come and you're just like, ayo, nightmare, because then it'll go everywhere. And so yeah, these are all challenges I think that, yeah, we do
yeah.
need to think about and yeah, consider
Yeah,
when
so the sanitized versions of papers that we see don't really, the final published papers of work or reports don't really
Definitely.
talk about all these that go into it. I would have loved to have had a much longer conversation about this, but we are running short of time and we also have to take in audience questions. So, shall we take some of the audience questions and then we will quickly give the answers to the three questions that were asked and
Yeah.
we'll take it from there. Yeah. So,
sure.
yeah, so there is a question from Jayant Gonzalez. How do your respective courses at APU shape your outlook to the fields you are currently in? What can prospective or current students expect from their education and careers? One of you, any one of you, both of you, who wants to go first? Raise your
Aparna,
hand.
would you like to go first?
Okay. I think APU sort of like firstly introduced me to the field of nature conservation itself, and I think I really found my love for ecology through my experience at APU. I think it also additionally gives a very broad and holistic view on the whole nature people interaction. Um, and that was really nice. One thing which really I think stood out for me was in shaping my uh, my views were the classes and also the guest lectures and people who came in and talked for an hour or so, and it was really sprung some interesting thoughts or introduced us to very different types of work which is happening in different parts of the world, and so that was really nice about the course. I think I am where I am, I think, because of the direction in which I was led in during my bachelor's. I think what can prospective students look out for after APU is I think APU sets a very nice foundation for especially the bachelor's program for taking up most kinds of fields afterwards. I think a lot of fields, especially interdisciplinary fields like conservation, accepts people from all kinds of backgrounds. And it's not required that you do biology before it or after it. But I think one thing which APU does is to help us have a different kind of thinking. One more thing which really helped me was the focus was not on factual knowledge, but more on processes or questions of why and how. And that helped me, like, broaden my perspective or think better as a scientist. Or I think it's something which helps in any field going forward. I think after APU, you can do anything you want to do.
That'll make a lot of us happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Tara?
Yeah. I think what really is special to me is that even in the admissions process, there's a whole thing of like where are you from? They have these quotas of like they try to make it as balanced as possible. So finally, when you're thrown into your batch, you meet people from like all over the country with all kinds of backgrounds, which is a huge exposure, and you're also talking about a lot of things that different people relate to, empathize with. For some people it's completely new. So all those small moments of like communicating these concepts of some people's lived experiences to other people who have no background context of it, those itself are sort of like, I would say, mini examples of what you would face when you finish your degree and you're actually going to go out and work in this field but that will be on a much larger scale than what you're experiencing in the classroom. And the second one is it's not just a typical, teacher says student do mug vomit space. You read, you think, you analyze, and you come up with your own opinion, irrespective of whether you're speaking in English, Hindi, Telugu, Malayalam, whatever. The importance is not given to how well your grammar is or how well you speak English. It's about what you're saying, why you're thinking about why you're, what you're saying, and the focus is on the journey that each person is making and what they're communicating, which is an important thing to, I feel, which that sort of building that culture is something that really helps set a base for good communication skills which are needed in the development sector. And also the fact that, the classroom, there's always a stress on the classroom is not restricted to a physical classroom with a teacher, board, chairs and students. A classroom can be anywhere. So these are very unique things about the course and the degree that APU offers, which I still treasure very much. And your teachers also eventually do become your friends, and it's a very special place that way. So yeah, it's not just about the academic. The academic papers you get to read are amazing, but in addition to that, there is all of this, which is extremely valuable.
Thank you from all of us. All I can say is that really makes us feel quite happy that maybe some of the things we're doing it right.
Yeah.
Any other questions, or we can let's look at the answers to the quiz that you all gave. So the first question um, uh, was a
What
little
is
tough because the one before. One second. This is oh okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So not there were answers, but nobody has got the right one. So go ahead, Tara.
Yeah, so it was interesting to get answers of China, Adivasi, very exciting. Thanks for the interaction. This is actually an edict from the Ashoka pillar. And the reason this is up here is because um, history of conservation in India dates back even to the time of Ashoka, where there were strict rules about how to manage natural resources and how to look after forests, and who can cut how many trees. You have to get permission, and they had a whole system of forest guards and superintendents, and they would select trees that could be cut once a year or maximum twice a year with permission, and things were a punishable offense if you did something without authority. And even, nothing was ever wasted. If an animal was killed for food, the bones, the husk, nothing would be wasted or burnt. So there was a whole, if for those of you who are interested in exploring, there's a whole system that dates back to the Ashoka period of when conservation in India really started. So I thought, in light of World Conservation Day, it would be nice to take a journey back in time.
Yes.
So nice.
Aparna, so many folks got it right,
Yeah.
but so the picture was identified as okay. You can go ahead, Aparna, and say what the answer is and why you
Yeah.
put it.
So, so many of you got it right. It is coffee seeds and elephant dung, and we think of us humans as bringing in invasive species in forests, but here is a species, the elephant, which is dispersing coffee, which is actually an invasive. In Which can be an invasive species in rainforests. As you can see, this whole understory of the forest is covered with coffee seedlings, and even the small stems, the thin stems that you see, which are which are like 4 feet tall coffee shrubs which have grown, and it's sort of unlike other invasive species. Say there are species like lantana that once the canopy is firm and once there's shade, they actually die out. But coffee, on the other hand, does well in shaded situations, just like native species do. And so it's a pretty difficult challenge to remove a shade tolerant species from forests. And the elephants are not helping.
So here is a complex problem of you're conserving a species like the elephant, but that is also contributing to habitat degradation by invasive or whatever exotic species in
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
yeah. So conservation is extremely a very complex space. So Tara, the next one was so people have you've seen the answers. I think it's some of them have said habitat may be green. Another has said diatoms on the turtle's shell. So why is it called a green turtle?
Well, interestingly, it's called the green turtle because of its diet. So there are seven major turtle species, of which the green turtle is the only one that's a herbivore, and it eats a lot of. I mean, it's affectionately called the natural ocean lawnmower because it eats a lot of seagrass and algae. Um, and because it eats so much of green stuff, its cartilage and fat has become green. So that is actually why it's called the green turtle, because of its diet. Um, and interestingly, so it's an endangered species of turtle because of a lot of hunting and harvesting of its eggs. So along the East African coast, a lot of these green turtle eggs are a delicacy, and people like to eat them. So there are a lot of interventions across the world to try and reduce the amount of harvesting and to try and reduce the amount of hunting. And green turtles also are very commonly caught, tangled up in fish nets and come up as bycatch, and end up getting tangled in the nets and choking in the nets, which is why their numbers have been depleting. But yeah, there are efforts to try and restore their numbers because ecologically they play a very important role. If the lawnmowers were not there, there would be too much of seagrass and algae, which would block out a lot of space for other life to grow. And also the fact that it keeps eating stimulates the production. And also when they eat the seagrass and then poop it out, their poop is like food for a lot of other people and very nutritious and like natural manure for that area. So that's the role that green turtles play in the ocean environment.
Thanks, Tara. So I think we have one more question, and then I think we will also be out of time. So the question is, what advice would you have for someone who wants to shift careers from a purely social sciences arena to an environmental conservation space? I know both of y'all are from sciences, right? Or
Uh, I
go
mean,
ahead.
I think it's never too late if you really want to come into it. Just because you don't have any, fancy technical knowledge of scientific names or this or that, there's always a space to learn and grow. And I think for someone, if you've come from a social sciences background, you will be very aware of how to communicate sensitively and how to be aware of your surroundings, which is really important in this field, even though there is a lot of science involved. So I think that's not an issue. If you want to do something for conservation, go for it. There's nothing stopping you except yourself. So there's no restrictions, I think. Like you don't have to have a lot of scientific knowledge to come into conservation because it's such a broad topic.
Sure.
That's my take. Yeah.
Aparna, you want to say something?
I think conservation has space for so many different types of people from so many different types of fields, right? From artists to social scientists to writers, communicators, and it really requires all these people from different backgrounds to, decide conservation action and communicate it and find out solutions and so on. So I think, especially for social scientists, I think there's so much that they can contribute to and do in the conservation environmental space.
Yes. So that is a very positive note to end on. So, and we are also running really out of time. So, thank you both, Tara, Aparna, for being here today. It was wonderful talking to you all. And also, thank you to the audience, whoever was there and participated in the quiz. So tomorrow we are having a series at 5 p.m. Nature Writing for Children, a webinar, and with the artist and designer Sudarshan Shaw. And he will also talk about his book, When a Forest Wakes Up. So please tune into our YouTube channel to also to view this webinar. So thank you, everyone, and good evening, good night.
Thank you, Seema. It was so much fun. Thank you,
Yes,
Tara.
this is fun. Thank you. Thank you, Seema Aparna.